This is Joshua Hart here for Seconds Out. Delighted today, as always, to be joined by trainer Xavier Miller. Xavier, thank you very much for your time today, as always. And how is everything?
It's the gym's buzzing at the moment, and there's about 9, 10 pros here. So yeah, it's all good, really good.
Well, we were just talking about off camera. It's a busy time for your stable. You've got some big fights coming up for some of your fighters. We'll start off Yusuf Kamari. He takes on Levi Kinisona for is it the English title, I believe?
Yeah, lightweight English title. Yeah, yeah, that'll be on a good win show.
So a very big opportunity there.
hmm
Um, just talk to me about how this opportunity has come about and how do you prepare for someone like Levi Kinisona?
Yeah, I mean, Youssef, he had a final eliminator against Kirk Stevens a few months back. He stopped him late, really good performance. Kirk put up a great fight as well, and that put him in line for this opportunity. So yeah, I know of Levi. It's going to be a very good fight, very good fight. And yeah, once Youssef won this fight, then we'll we want to looking at British again.
So the plan forward for Yusuf, win the English, and then straight back to the British level, trying to go for those bigger accolades in the sport.
Definitely, I want him in that mix with those lightweights. He's very comfortable now, and yeah, looking forward to it. Yusuf's had some really good performances. He's really very well known domestically. So yeah, he's one of the most skilled guys out here in the lightweight division. So yeah, looking forward to another good fight.
And then another name, Alfie Clegg, he's out again very soon in another title defense on a Dean White show.
hmm
Dean's someone who's been very high on Alfie Clegg. He's been promoting him,
hmm
screaming his name from the rooftops for a while now. And another good fight for him. Just how excited are you for that?
Yeah, the Dean's done a great job promoting Alfie. The two of them get on really well. They both understand what it is they're trying to do in the business of boxing. He's a flyweight IBO youth world champion at the moment, Alfie, and he'll be looking to go for a Commonwealth silver. So, going for a second belt. And yeah, and then we'll see where we go from there. But again, very skillful fighter, Alfie Clegg. Fun to watch, and he's got a really good following, a loyal following. He's got a little army there.
You mentioned obviously going for the Commonwealth silver. That's a bit of a step from challenging for, let's say, obviously you mentioned the IBO youth title.
Mhm. Mhm.
Going for the Commonwealth silver, that opens up the doors that can put him in line for the Commonwealth title itself. And then if he gets hands on that,
Exactly.
that opens up a lot of doors at that point. Is that the plan? Win the silver and then see how many doors open up for bigger opportunities?
Definitely. I'm very interested in also the European silver. I just boxed for one of my fighters boxed for it recently. I had a draw out in Italy, but yeah, I spoke to some of the reps out there. That's a good belt for Alfie and for Yusuf and for and any other guys in my gym. So they're all good belts. You get a European silver, and then you can go for a European, get a Commonwealth silver, going for a Commonwealth. So yeah, it's all about building. And the most important thing to me is the experience they get from fighting these kind of guys, these 10 rounders, these 12 rounders. It's good experience for later on in their career.
And then Bilal Fawaz, you mentioned he's going to be in a big fight again soon. Just tell us about that.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of his opponent off the top of my head right now, but that's a final eliminator for the English title. Linus Udofi is fighting for the English title this month. And yeah, be interested in looking to make that fight. Bilal wins is a final eliminator, and then I think that I'm very confident Linus will win the title again. Very good fighter, Linus, and yeah, them two will be a great fight end of the year or next year. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, Bilal will be back in action. Same card as Youssef. That's the 12th of October, and Alfie Clegg is the week after on Dean White's show at Tolworth.
And just obviously looking at it as a whole with your fighters, how proud are you seeing your fighters now being in a position where titles are coming? You got the Commonwealth Silver, English title fights, English title eliminators.
Mhm.
Um, it's like they're starting to cross that bridge from that development stage to okay, it's starting to get real now. Fights are going to get a lot tougher, and they've got to show the maturity, haven't they? Obviously, someone like Yusuf Kamari, he's already competed with some good names in the sport, but for Alfie Clegg, for example, it's still on that climb and crossing that bridge now, isn't it?
Definitely. I think what excites me more than anything else, me and Nick, my business partner, when we started this, the whole IQ Foundation movement was to build fighters through the amateurs and then get them to turn pro. That's more of the kind of journey that we're on. See, I love being involved in big fights, obviously, but I think it's very important for a coach, obviously, to have built fighters, and as they're coming up through domestically, and then you want to work towards, your Commonwealth, your Europeans, and then your world. That's what you want to do is build with your fighters. Feels a bit different when you've had a fighter from the amateurs and then they turn pro and then they win something as a pro. You've been part of that journey. And as we started from the very, very beginning, this is what me and Nick were, that was our number one focus. We wanted to be known in the boxing business as trainers and as a gym that's actually built fighters. So it's not like, yeah, where the hell did this person come from? It's like, you built with the boxer, and that's very important to us.
Would you say you feel more of a sense of achievement when, let's say for example, you take a fighter who's just won a British title, and then you take them from the British scene, European, then world, or would you say there's more satisfaction taking someone from their debut to, let's say, they may never win a world title but a British title, and building them up that way and seeing their proper rise?
100%, definitely. And every boxer, like not every boxer you've got in your gym is a world beater. For some boxers, the southern area is like a world title for them. So some British level as far as they're going to go, some European. Some will challenge for a world title, some will win a world title. You can't judge one fighter against the other. Everybody's abilities and journeys are all different, and everyone's ceiling's different as well. So I celebrate, every achievement of my gym. Even I don't train the amateurs anymore, but every time they do well and they win something, obviously, I celebrate it because you're coming through our system. So it's like every fight feels the same, but nothing feels quite like a debut. Your debut, everybody comes out for your debut, so it's a big deal. And that's the beginning of your career, and then you see where you go from there. I think that part of it is what really interests me, is that because obviously I've come from an education background, spent 16 years in education. So, it's about, bringing these young people along and seeing how far they can go and get them to maximize their full potential. That for me, that carries a lot of weight.
Well, it's good to hear. It's good to hear that your fighters are going to be stepping up into some big fights, but just moving away and looking at some of the broader topics in boxing. We'll start off, we'll go back a little bit now, back to the end of July. I remember when we spoke about Joyce versus Chisora, and you were one of the only people I can remember who was backing Derek Chisora going into it. And it's fair to say you were very right in making that call. What did you make of his showing on the night?
There's one thing you can't buy is experience. It's just that Derek's just been there so many times, and even when he's exhausted, he can will himself to the finishing line. He knows what it takes in that regard. I have been involved in training camps with him before, maybe just a couple of training camps. So I've seen how hard he works, and that's his ace card. Is making sure that he is fit to compete. In those kind of fights. When it gets tough, he's there. And I can tell you firsthand, like that right hand that he throws, sometimes it comes from a blind spot, and by the time it lands, like it's too late. He's got an awkward kind of overhand right. But he's been around a long time. Obviously you can see the influence of Don Charles in his style. I think I was just very, very happy for Derek. I think he's talking about getting to 50, and again, a great achievement. And when his career is all done, he can say, I fought everybody I wanted to fight. And for me, that's what boxing is about. There's too much emphasis on unbeaten records and your O and so on and so forth. 80s and 90s boxing was nothing like that. Those guys have all competed against the best guys, and you compete against the best guys, there's a chance you might lose a couple along the way in your journey. So to me, that's realistic boxing. So, it's not really about, it's more about who you boxed. Everyone can have a really good record, but then you box no one. You're not really testing until you're getting with the best. So yeah, congratulations to Derek. Honestly, I think I would personally like to see a third fight between Chisora and White. I wasn't that hot on it while I was in the White camp. I'll be honest with you, I'm always straightforward because I thought, Dillian's career was moving in a different direction. We were looking up really. But at this stage in both guys' careers, I think it's a natural fight. I think it makes a lot of sense. Both fights were so good, and both have got a strong following. And I think no matter where that fight is, I think it's that'll be a great fight for both of them. And whoever progresses from there can work their way back to the top again. They've both still got they've got something to offer. They both come with a lot of experience.
Just one thing I want to quickly highlight that you mentioned, the emphasis of unbeaten records and how protective some people are of keeping their own. Obviously, you mentioned 80s and 90s boxing where that wasn't as important, but for me, so when you compare records in boxing to records in UFC, you can see fighters in MMA with records of 34 wins and 10 defeats, and they'll be considered a number one contender, a world champion, and that O doesn't matter. But then if you had someone with a record of 34-10 in boxing, let's say nowadays, it's very rare you find someone with a record like that that can still headline. Obviously, Derek Chisora being an example of someone who can still defy the odds record. How frustrating is it? And would you say it was almost before this influence from Turkey Al Sheikh where we started seeing fighters risk their O? Would you say that was one of the biggest killers that we had when it came to trying to make the big fights?
I definitely would say it's a problem. I mean, Errol Spencer's on a great run, but Crawford was always lurking in the background. And everybody knew in boxing that was the fight to make. Obviously you make your call who you think is going to win, but that's just like in the 90s, in the 80s, like these two guys getting the best fight, the best, someone's going to lose, but you just come back and come again. And I think that's what I do. I don't know anything about the UFC, but I do know that they always fight the best guys that are around. They don't do a lot of what they do in boxing. I wouldn't say these boxers, a lot of them are scared of each other. It's not that. I think if you offer them enough money, as we're seeing, they do take the fights. So fair play to them, because when their career's over, nobody really cares. They've got to make sure they're financially secure. So I understand where they're coming from, but just for a fan's perspective, it's a good thing that a lot of the UK fans, they see through a lot of the BS. You'll go and still support Derek and go and support and Dillian and so on and so forth and Joshua, but even though they've got a few losses on their record, they're still going to end up, with establishing a great career. That's what it's about, is getting in with good guys. Dillian's resume speaks for itself. Derek's, Joshua's resume. These guys have got in with good fighters. You're going to lose one or two fights along the way. That's just the way it goes. And as I spoke about earlier, your ceiling, that sometimes it's just your level. Some guys are good enough to win a world title, and it all depends what era you're in as well. Sometimes it all depends on the era. If you're in an era that favors you, then yeah, you can go on with an unbeaten record. But other times, if we picked you up and dropped you in a different era, your record would look very different. I don't think Mayweather would have the record he has if he was boxing the 80s and having to box Duran and Hagler and Leonard and Hearns. I'm not saying he wouldn't have been great, because he would have, but it's realistic to think that maybe one of the two guys would have beat him. Thomas Hearns had a very difficult style, so I always favored Thomas Hearns to beat Floyd. But then at the same time, I think Floyd would have beat Duran. But you see, when you're in that mix, in that era where you've got those great fighters, that's what happens. So yeah, I think the fans know what's going on. I don't think they're just following fighters because of an unbeaten record. I think they're following the fighter because they like what they bring. Derek brings value for money. Dillian brings value. Joshua brings value. I mean, selling out 90,000 speaks for itself. So yeah, just like I say in all the interviews, enjoy these guys while they're here. People do a lot of moaning, but when they're gone, remember when Tyson was out of the sport, and then we had the Klitschko era. Wasn't that exciting, was it? And then we had to wait for Holyfield and Tyson and Bo to come along. Enjoy the guys while they're here.
One thing as well, with when you look at fighters and undefeated records, obviously the man that Derek Chisora beat, Joe Joyce. When we look at him, let's say post Joseph Parker fight in September 2022, so years ago, he was considered a world beater and possibly the man to beat Tyson Fury, and then he has a few losses on his record, and people all of a sudden want to forget about him. A lot of the calls post fight have been for Joyce to retire. When you see these comments about a fighter, and so obviously some fans are saying it for the well-being, but the fans out there are saying they're shot to bits now. How does it make you feel when you're just seeing people being told to retire?
It's a little irritated at times, because especially in the heavyweight division, one win and you're right back in the mix again. I think a lot of people are just too emotional and are too quick to jump on other people's opinions. Have your own opinion. Yeah, maybe it's just a style. It doesn't mean Joyce can't come back and look good against another opponent. Maybe the style of Derek was different. Maybe it's just the style. Derek comes with a lot of experience as well. So yeah, you never know. If Joyce fights Parker again, it might look, maybe Joyce will beat him again. Maybe he's just got the start to beat him. Doesn't mean that he's completely shot. I think the worry is when you see guys with maybe 3, 4, 5 losses straight, then you see the decline, then you've got to start asking those kind of questions. But when you're on a good run, then you lost the fight, then you come back and you might win that next fight. It means you're still in the mix. You might not be performing to your best, but you're still there. You're still asking questions. So yeah, I think people are a little bit too quick to judge personally.
Do you believe that Joe Joyce should continue, or are you someone who thinks he should retire?
Yeah, I think he can still compete. I mean, Jared Anderson just lost the other day. I think Joyce would have beat him. Um, it just got to pick the right fights. I think a lot of times what fighters need to do if they do take a loss or two is take a step back and have some building fights. There's nothing wrong with coming back and having some building fights. It depends on what stage you're in your career, but and it depends how you've lost. If you lost, had a bad knockout a couple of times, then rebuild, fight more of like a C, D, E rate guy. Sometimes a lot has to do with confidence. Build your confidence back up and then work your way back up. So I see some fighters doing that now. I think it's a good idea. I think it'd be a good idea for someone like Devin, who I've got a lot of respect for. I think out of all those lightweights guys in around those weight, I think he's got the best resume. I think he's the one that took the most chances. But again, he's been slated in the media now, and I think it's wrong, considering the other guy wasn't a clean fighter at the time. So yeah, boxing, funny business, man. It's funny business.
And then just moving away, obviously, from the Joyce Chisora and all the emphasis on undefeated records. Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois, two fighters who were undefeated at one stage and being raved about, suffered some losses, and then look at them now. They're back on top. IBF Heavyweight Championship of the World, 96,000 at Wembley. It kind of proves your point that the undefeated record doesn't matter. People can come again, and they've certainly come again. They fight in 2.5 weeks. Who are you favouring heading into that fight?
Sometimes boxing is just momentum, but it's obviously it's sensible to go for the guy that's been there and done it and has had a lot more experience. Josh has had the better amateur background, an Olympian. I think he's a two-time world champion, isn't he, at the moment? But I'm more impressed with Dubois' recent form than I am with Joshua's, and only because Joshua, I know it's the Ngannou fight. I don't really read anything into that at all. I don't even think he should have been competing against Fury. I think that was really strange weapon in that fight. But and then Wallin, Wallin is not it's not Hrgovic. So I think Daniel has fought the better. The last 2-3 fights, performances to me have been better from Daniel because of who he's boxed. But Joshua is very experienced now, and at this stage in your career, you start making more sensible choices when you're in there because you've been there and done it. And I think that's what sets up this fight so well for it to be. You'd have to slightly favour Joshua, but honestly, no shock if Daniel's to win at all. Daniel's young, and he's on a high. He's very confident right now. He's now a world champion. When you do get a world champion, you do seem like a lot of boxers, they do seem lifted once they do get that belt. So yeah, I think it's a very, very good fight. I don't really want to pick a winner. I know it's funny. Don Charles is a close friend of mine, probably the closest friend in boxing, and he's obviously got Daniel. But I know Joshua. I know of Joshua for a long time. He looks after one of my guys at my gym, Jesse Brandon, and yeah. So obviously, it's very difficult for someone to put me in a spot and say who I think will win. I'd rather just watch the fight.
That's understandable. What do you feel? Obviously, Daniel Dubois is an underdog in this fight, but a very live underdog, some are saying. What do you feel he needs to do in order to be victorious and defeat Anthony Joshua?
You put me on the spot again because I'm talking to Don, so I can't really talk about tactics.
Okay.
But yeah, I think both guys need to establish their jab. I think whoever can establish their jab first, because they've got a very good chance of. They both got a very good right hand. So I think it'll be a battle of the jabs the first couple of rounds. That's what I see personally. But yeah, heavyweight boxing, anyone lands clean and it's trouble. Yeah, I just can't wait to see it. Can't wait.
And then moving away, we had the announcement of Artur Beterbiev versus Dmitry Bivol out in Saudi Arabia on October 12th. But a big fight that British boxing fans aren't too happy to see on the undercard due to the fact it could have easily headlined again over here. Fabio Wardley versus Fraser Clarke too. We all remember how good that first fight was between the two. How do you see a rematch going?
Again, I don't really know Fraser. I won my heavyweight, Ergel Elizaj. I took him down for sparring at Donna's gym with Fraser Clarke. It's a very good spar. That's the first time I met Fraser. But Fabio, I do know because obviously of my time with Dillian. He's managed by Team White. So Fabio, one of the good guys in boxing. I really like Fabio. Speaks really well too. A lot of heart. That right hand is for real. I've seen him in sparring. Sometimes you don't even have to land that clean, and it causes an effect from his opponent. So I do favour Fabio in this fight. I think he'll make the adjustments that he needs to. He's got a good team around him. His head coach is a very cool guy as well, nice guy. I think he's been with him for a long, long time, and obviously he's down at the Davidson's gym, and they do their homework. So I can see Fabio winning this fight. I think he was. I think when he hurt Frazier, he has to put him away because Frazier, again, Olympic experience, is giving Fabio a lot of trouble. Yeah, great fight. That one I can't wait to see, but I favour Fabio.
How big of a toll could that first fight have taken on the two?
I think Fabio's still relatively young, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he's like
and Frazier, and he probably, I know Frazier's older, isn't he? He's older. Hard to say. Fabio's had the longer pro career, hasn't he? And then Frazier's the longer. I'm not sure. I don't know. Probably just harden the both of them, to be honest with you. They haven't been in too many fights like that. I haven't really seen Fabio in a fight like that, to be honest, a back and forth war like that. So yeah, one fight at this stage, it should be all right. Probably done. I wouldn't say it's done a more good than harm, to be, because that would just sound weird. But sometimes you need those kind of fights to see. You get seasoned, you get hardened, you get the experience from it, and then when you go back again, you know the adjustments you need to make. So yeah, I think Fabio needs to be a bit more aggressive. Can't really be a boxing match. He needs to really take it to Frazier. But yeah, I got Fabio.
one thing that a lot of people have been talking about, and they spoke about this even more in the build up to the first fight, but especially on the Fraser Clarke side of things, a lot of people mention Fraser obviously being a lot older than what his record would suggest, but you've got to look at the amateur pedigree. A lot of questions were flying around as to if Fraser was to lose the fight to Fabio Wardley, where would he go then? With the draw last time, if Fraser is to get defeated by Fabio Wardley, how tough would that road back be, especially at his age and with the limited professional experience that he does have?
I don't think it'd be that hard. If we were talking about a different weight division, I'd say, yeah, but heavyweights, one good win, you're right back in. He's got good fights out there. I mean, Adelaide's a good fight for Frazier. There's a lot of good fights, a lot of good heavyweights coming up at the moment as well. Obviously I'm looking with interest because I've got my own heavyweight who is extremely talented. He's sparred a lot of the top guys already. So yeah, I think Frazier, there's more than enough fights for Frazier to build himself back up. So yeah, either way, both guys can come back.
And then just very lastly, Oleksandr Usyk versus Tyson Fury, the rematch. It will take place just 4 days before Christmas at the end of the year. Fury and his team have come out and they've confirmed that he'll be sticking with the same corner that he had last time, despite all the comments made by not just Tyson himself, but fans around the world saying whatever needs to be done. But he will be sticking with that corner. It'll be the exact same face as the first fight. What do you make of that? Obviously, a lot of mixed opinions on it.
Well, I actually thought, I've always said it for a long time, I thought that Usyk would beat Tyson Fury quite easy. I always felt that, to me, he's out of all the heavyweights, he's the guy with the natural talent. He's fundamentally sound, and comes with a lot of experience. I thought he was going to be a bit easier. I thought he'd win that fight maybe 8-4 against Fury. I just didn't think Fury could, because Usyk's very good at making you give up your height. He's just technically gifted. The angles. These guys are so big; it's hard for them to track Usyk at times. I was quite surprised with the tactics. I thought it was really good that Usyk was pressuring him and walking him down at times and chopping down the body. I thought it was a good game plan. But the way Tyson was able to come back into it, it showed me something. I didn't think the fight would play out that way. So now it's more of a 50-50 fight to me. Now the first one's played out. Now it's more 50-50. I really thought Usyk was going to beat him quite easy. But yeah, I'm looking at a different fight now. So yeah, I still slightly favour Usyk. Do slightly favour Usyk, but I wouldn't be surprised if Tyson was able to pull it off. Might even be a draw. And then we'll see a third one. But yeah, I like to see all these fights. I mean, even if Fury was to lose and Joshua was to lose, you're still going to want to see Joshua and Fury. Everybody, you can't tell me that's not going to still sell out Wembley. So yeah, just yeah, looking forward to all these fights.
One thing that I find interesting that you say there is you feel the fight's closer going into a rematch now after you've seen the first fight, whereas most fans are saying the polar opposite and saying that Usyk or Fury will be a bit more of a decisive result next time. What makes you feel that the fight will be much closer?
I think with Usyk, for some reason, after like four or five rounds, he kind of took his foot off the gas and allowed Tyson back into the fight. And I don't know the reasons. It could be maybe he's thinking about the 12 rounds and maybe that he needs to, you know, pace himself a bit more. And during that spot, it gave Tyson, the confidence to start coming on, and he landed some good uppercuts in there. And but then Fury just like a switch just turned it around. And to be honest with you, that fight should have been stopped. You can't bounce off the ropes 3-4 times and not wave the fight off. I mean, it was a strange one, but Tyson's proven in the past that he can get up and continue against Wilder and so on. So maybe it's given the benefit of doubt for that reason. And I think a lot of referees need to do that when they're refereeing these fights. Make sure you do understand the character of the fighter that you're refereeing, so that when you do have to make a hard call, you can make the right one at the time. Because a lot of guys just do seem to like recover from a shot pretty quickly, or have the ability to bounce back. But yeah, I think it's because of those middle rounds. I'm saying to myself now, I don't think Fury will. He seemed to start quite negatively. I don't think he'll do that this time. That's why I see a closer fight. It's just that I see Usyk pulling away towards the end of the fight. I think these. When I first started boxing, I had a couple of guys in the gym, and I remember my coach always saying that he always said the smaller guy push the pace, because the big guys won't be able to go with you. These cruiserweights, they're quite nimble, and the heavyweights sometimes a bit cumbersome. So that's why I see the problem is in the last third of the fight, where I think Usyk will start to pull away. But mid-fight, I think it'd be very, very close again. But I wouldn't be surprised with either result. I just think it's a great fight, and yeah, we'll see what Tyson's got left as well.
Just one thing that has popped into my head, back to the Artur Beterbiev versus Dimitri Bivol card. There's one fight on there that seems to have drawn a bit of criticism. Chris Eubank Jr., he's in a fight that a lot of people aren't happy with, especially when there was rumors of him facing Canelo and him wanting big fights. When you see the type of opponent Eubank Jr.'s got, and then you look at the stage of the career that he's at, how frustrating is it just to see him? I guess you'd say fans feel that he's not testing himself.
Not frustrating at all. I think I don't think I don't think he's where he wants to be in boxing yet. He obviously wants to beat a big name. He's come up short against Saunders, and who else did he box and came up short against? So there's Billy Joe Saunders, and they beat James DeGale. I think George Groves he came up short against as well, wasn't it? So maybe he's not where he wants to be. And I think obviously he had before this last fight, he'd got stopped, then he came back, got a win. So maybe this is just part of the building process. Maybe they're just building him, bringing him back up and getting him ready for a big fight next year. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I'd rather see a fighter being busy. I want to see the big fights, but when I see a fighter taking a fight where they're still staying busy, staying in the gym, the only time you're going to get to really work on what you've been working in the gym is real time, is during a fight. When you can do that in these kind of fights, there's still a few adjustments that he probably needs to make before he's ready to step up again. And I think this is a good opportunity to do it. And why not? He's going to get paid. Out there, everyone seems to be getting paid well, so you can't knock him for that. You have to remember when these guys finish their careers, they've got to make that money last. Everyone thinks it's a huge amount of money, but you're getting paid in a lump sum. That money's got to last you to the rest of your life. You've got to invest well. So any money you can pick up along the way is better. That's why I always prefer fighters to get signed to like a Matchroom or a Wasserman or a Queensbury, because then a lot of times you get building fights, but you're getting paid each time you fight. And then you put yourself in a better financial position. So yeah, anytime anyone's going out and again building fights, I like it. Just like with the Joe Cordina fight and Shakur. I think for Shakur, I think it's a great fight. I think he needs these kind of fights. As I was speaking about earlier with Devin, Devin's had those kind of fights against those world champions, and consistently. I think Shakur needs to do that if he's going to work towards fighting someone like Tank. And with Joe Cordina, again, if you've got the right backing, you can jump straight into a world title fight off a knockout loss. I'd pick Kakachi in that fight. I've been watching him for quite a long time, obviously, because I do have Youssef guys in and around that weight. So I am watching those guys. But I always thought Kakachi would give anybody a bit of a nightmare. He's very, very talented. But, again, it could well be the weight. Joe's moved up now. It could have been that shot that they keep talking about. I don't think it would have changed the course of the fight at all. I think Kakachi was going to go on to win that fight. But, yeah, I think it's a good test for Shakur, actually. It's just that Shakur's in a no-win situation. If you don't stop him, Joe got stopped in his last fight, you're going to get criticism. So even though he needs it because of his to build up his, his experience against these top flight guys, it's another one of those kind of fights where, if you don't stop him, then it's a bit of a problem.
So just going back to the point about Eubank Jr. So what do you make of the criticism flying around his name right now?
Whose name? We talking about which one?
On Chris Eubank Jr.'s name, the criticism.
I don't know why people criticize him so much. Like he's never in a boring fight. He just puts his head down and just throws a lot of punches. And he gives it everything. So I don't know why people are so negative about him. It's not like he's scared to fight anybody. You can see he's willing to get in with in hard fights. But Joe Saunders is technically very good. George Groves, good right hand. He was a powerful guy at the time. So yeah, and he didn't shy away from those kind of guys. He walked through what he had to walk through, and he was coming on in the Billy Joe Saunders fight, second half definitely, and he was coming on late in the George Groves fight. So I don't know why he gets given such a hard time. I like watching him. I don't really got a problem with Chris. I think he's very different to his dad, but he's got his own personality, and he's good to watch. He's fun to watch. He's going to give anyone a good fight. It's just that again, this might be a ceiling. We don't know. Sometimes it's just the right fight at the right time.
And just very, very lastly now, Fury versus AJ, you mentioned it briefly earlier. If those two are to meet and face off finally in the ring, who do you believe wins?
I've got AJ beating him. I've got AJ beating Fury. I always had AJ beating Fury. Always did.
For what reason? What makes you side with AJ?
I think AJ has I think he's got the height and the ability. He's a good counterpuncher. He's a good combination puncher, AJ. He's a good left hook, good straight right hand. And in a lot of areas to be able to match Fury, but obviously Fury doesn't carry the kind of power that Joshua does. But I slightly favour Joshua in that fight, especially at this stage, more so. I think with Fury getting knocked down by Ngannou, I know that he can hit, but he's not a boxer. And then he's been down, I don't know if it's 4 or 5 times against Wilder. I can't remember how many times he's been down against him. And then he was bouncing off the ropes against Usyk. Again, not the biggest puncher. I think Fury might put him away. But yeah, we don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Well, Xavier, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Always good to catch up. And best of luck in all the fights that you got coming up in your stable. I hope we can catch up again soon. Cheers.
Definitely. Thank you for your time. Take care.